Prisons, by design, are not welcoming places.
As humans, we adapt to our environments. In a regular prison setting where it's like harsh and it's just gang affiliated and it's just like all the nonsense is around.
Inside, rows of crowded cells are stacked alongside and on top of each other. The floors are concrete, it's loud, and it smells weird. And the concentration of so many people in such a small enclosed space makes for an unpredictable and sometimes violent environment.
Unfortunately, sometimes you get tied into that and your mentality shifts. So sometimes you have to be on survival mode.
The message is clear. No one is meant to feel at home in prison. And for correctional officers, it's not much different.
Some days you can walk into a general population housing unit and 5 minutes in, feel like your day is shot. 5 minutes. You didn't even give the day a chance. And you're already like, I've had enough and I'm okay with leaving. But you can't.
But what if the American prison experience were reimagined to the benefit of both inmates and corrections officers? At SCI Chester, a correctional facility half an hour south of Philadelphia, that's what they're trying to figure out. I headed over there to learn more about an experiment they're doing, one that prioritizes the well-being of everyone in prison. In this episode, we'll learn about the living conditions of SCI Chester's general prison population, and in stark contrast, an experimental housing unit called Little Scandinavia.
Right here, everything on one side is Little Scandinavia, and everything on the other side is just the general prison environment. So nothing has changed out here, only in there.
Got it. It's a portal to Norway.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a whole different world. This is Fighting Crime, the show that asks big questions about crime and how to stop it. I'm Christina Quinn, a journalist, and I've spent my career digging into stories to discover the truth. I'm going across the country, from prisons to universities, police chiefs to inmates, to look at the evidence and question everything we think we know about how to make America safer. I want to know what actually works and meet the people who are making it happen. So join us as we figure out new ways to fight crime and make society safer. And be prepared to think differently. There are almost 2 million Americans in prison. And every year, roughly 40,000 of them are released. That's 40,000 former convicts that need to integrate back into society. And they're often re-entering a world that's remarkably different from the one they left before prison. A world that requires skills that many incarcerated people don't have. This, along with the need to survive, can force people back into a life of crime. Things aren't so great for correctional officers either. The average life expectancy of a CO is just 59 years. That's 20 years younger than the average American. And their suicide rate is 40% higher than the working age population. So can a Scandinavian-style prison environment improve the welfare of inmates and corrections officers? Can it better prepare prisoners who will be released for life on the outside and make them less likely to reoffend?
Morning. How you guys?
How are you?
How's it going? I'm good. Can't complain. Could be better, could be worse.
Right.
SCI Chester, short for State Correctional Institution, is a medium-security men's prison a half-hour south of Philadelphia. Razor wire fences tower over the 9-acre brick complex. When I enter the main entrance, a security guard instructs me to immediately put away my phone, pointing to a wall of lockers. On the opposite end of the waiting area, there are a couple of vending machines and a table with wooden blocks and toy cars for younger visitors. I'm here to get a closer look at Little Scandinavia, the redesigned housing unit that is part of the Scandinavian Prison Project, a program developed by academics and Pennsylvania's Department of Corrections. The housing unit was designed by corrections officers from Chester who had visited prisons in Sweden and Norway, countries where correctional facilities bear closer resemblance to the outside world. The COs incorporated some of what they observed into Little Scandinavia, which first opened in 2020. To appreciate the difference in prison conditions, I am first shown a cell block in the general population, or GenPop for short, just down the hall from Little Scandinavia. Allison Murphy leads the tour. She's the superintendent's assistant, and she goes by Murph. Murph wears many hats, including running the prison's rescue animal program. So as we make our way through the corridors during rec time, her chats with inmates along the way are about cats and dogs.
They're looking for a rescue for him.
Yeah, I was just talking to the vet lady.
All right, buddy.
You okay?
Another thing I noticed once we're in the prison is that we couldn't open a door unless the last door we walked through was shut and locked. Our tour was a series of open, step in, wait for the door to lock. Open, step in, wait for the door to lock. Finally, after a series of stop and locks, we arrive at D block. Murph keeps warning me how it's going to smell.
Different smells, darker, louder. Over here. Forewarning. Just for the full experience of how different it is. How you doing? We're just popping on real quick. So because it's completely different, even the amenities, I guess. So all they really have is a ping pong table. They did just get a PlayStation. But this is just total general population. So it's every crime. Guys that were just released from the restricted housing unit for a disciplinary sanction, they were just released maybe 20 minutes ago, and they're going to come right from from the restricted housing unit to here into a cell with anybody.
So I see a lot of doors. There are 2 floors. How many people per unit or cell block?
Yes.
So this is a block.
So there's 128 inmates that can live on this block. It's 2 beds per cell. And it's dark. It's dingy, I guess is the way you could put it. Doesn't smell the best, but it's very busy and loud.
You gave me a warning. I'm not that offended by the smell. I was expecting worse.
I guess because of how clean we are, but also it's because it's a K2 smell. So it's like cannabinoids. So it's synthetic marijuana. That's what you're going to smell. It's like this chemical smell. That's what that smell is.
Why is that?
Because it's what they're able to get in here. Yeah, so it's visitors that are smuggling it in for them. And so that's what that smell is. It's like a kind of nasty burnt smell of paper. You're not going to smell that on Little Scandinavia. Yeah. So it's just very busy and hectic over here. The 128 inmates to 1 officer as opposed to the max of 64 to 3 contact staff on Little Scandinavia that you're going to see in just a couple minutes.
128 inmates to 1 officer seems kind of crazy to me. But in SCI Chester, that's the norm. And that lone officer is sitting inside a circular desk at the center of the block. She's able to get a decent view of the entire unit from this perch. But the same goes for the inmates. It's like a panopticon. Everyone is on display. Metal tables and chairs are bolted to the floor. The lighting is somehow dim yet harsh, and yeah, it's noisy. There wasn't even that much going on, and it was just loud. And there was an odd tension in the air. I don't know if it's because I was clearly a tourist, but I was glad to leave. And now that I understood the smell of the GenPop unit wasn't a standard issued mustiness, but a mix of cleaning solution and synthetic drugs, the distinction between that block and Little Scandinavia, only a short walk away, was immediately obvious. Before I even entered the unit, I could smell food cooking. And once I stepped inside, the first thing I noticed was an airbrushed sign that said Little Scandinavia in cursive. Underneath it were 2 box planters with houseplants growing. To my left, there's a giant, pristine fish tank with tropical fish swimming around. The paint and lighting inside Little Scandinavia is warmer. The common area has vinyl-covered couches that are not bolted to the floor. There's a pool table and gym equipment. Off to the side, a laundry room, and right next to it, a kitchen. And the corrections officers have their own office.
First day, our quote-unquote grand opening, the floors were laid, all the bunks were removed, the beds were made. I felt very proud, but I also felt taken aback by it. My goodness, I used to work this housing unit before the transformation. It looked nothing like what it looked like before. And the energy was completely different.
My guide in Little Scandinavia is Paige Devane, a corrections officer based full-time in the housing unit since it began. Paige is tall with sparkly green eyes and hair slicked back into a bun. She has a commanding but warm presence, and previously she worked in Gen Pop.
The energy was lighter. It didn't feel so closed in on you. Energy, for me, is very real. This is something that we can feel. It almost feels measurable, right? So it didn't feel so closed in. It didn't feel so damp and heavy and dim here. It felt new and fresh and like we had opportunity.
But not everyone was convinced. Chief among them, the woman who runs SCI Chester, Superintendent Gina Clark, who I spoke with in her office. Clark, by the way, is a huge Kansas City Chiefs fan, as demonstrated by her red Casey window curtains and other fan merch scattered throughout her workspace. Lego dragons lurk in the corners, an expression of her love for Game of Thrones. Her platinum white hair is pulled back into a knot, exposing her shaved sides. The hairdo, the embrace of a rival football team in hostile territory, Clark was not what I expected. A sentiment she echoed about Little Scandinavia.
I wasn't a fan of Scandinavia, I'll tell you that when it opened. I still had that Graterford mindset, that old school corrections mindset. Like, what are you kidding? You're going to put pots and pans and cooking oil. And, I just thought it was going to be a disaster. I said, this is never going to work. We're giving them too many weapons. We're giving them too much freedom. People are going to take advantage of it. I could not have been more wrong in life than thinking that. And I have no problem admitting that I was completely 100% wrong. We've only had to respond to that housing unit once since it opened in 2022, and that was for an inmate-on-inmate fight, and it really wasn't that bad of a fight. And that's important to me because I'm responding to housing units weekly, maybe even 3 or 4 times a day on some really bad days. Are the guys that live on Scandinavia 100% innocent? No, they're not. I'm sure that there's things that go on that I don't know about. But when you talk about staff wellness and safety, having to respond there once in 4 years, that's pretty impressive to me. The biggest thing I probably learned from Scandinavia is the sense of community and how that community can change people. If you're a part of a community and it's working, regardless if you have your high points and your low points, the guys over there are a little bit different. And it's not the best of the best that's there. Right. So that's probably the biggest thing that I learned from it. And the biggest surprise was that, like, wow, if we can take this community-based style corrections inside, because it's outside, right? We have, halfway houses and things like that. But if we take that community-based style of corrections inside the facility while they're still here and duplicate it, what will our prisons look like?
Back in the Little Scandinavia housing unit, I was seeing things I would not expect to find in a prison block. I see a beautiful giant fish tank that is immaculate. And there are countless plants here.
Bringing greenery to any space is a good thing. And it created a job on the housing unit. So these are all live plants. We do have a resident who takes care of those each and every time. And they maintain that, and that's their job on the housing unit. So that's been really great. And the fish tank as well. We do have a specific gentleman who is our Aquaman, and he takes care of the fish tanks.
You guys have sound dampening panels. I was wondering, I'm like, those look like really lovely installations.
Right. So also very Norwegian. We saw so many things that we were able to take away and implement here. It is exciting. We didn't realize how beneficial these were until we had them. And again, when we were over there, we said, my goodness, everything is so quiet. And it was really nice. It's interesting because this environment is always full of so much chaos. But to have that quiet, it's like, wow, I have thoughts that are my own. I can process some things. So that was done with intention. And I think we could use some more.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's giving a little bit of IKEA.
Yeah, super IKEA, right? That's what we were going for. We nailed it. Yes, okay.
Where are my Swedish meatballs?
Wait, these guys can cook. So once we get there, I'm excited for that. I get to interact with these gentlemen. I get to learn about them as an individual. Over time, we build that rapport and they feel more comfortable sharing with me. One of the key principles that we brought back were the concept of dynamic security. It's just the idea that we can improve safety for staff and residents alike through building rapport. That was a big deal for us because of the fraternization policy. Sometimes, obviously, on a housing unit with 1 officer and 20 residents, there's no way you can build rapport with anyone, and it's quite frankly frowned upon.
But fraternization, building rapport between corrections officers and residents is integral to Little Scandinavia. This is not typical, but nothing is typical here. Inmates aren't even called inmates. They're called residents. In Gen Pop, corrections officers can get in trouble if they fraternize with inmates. But in Little Scandinavia, the emphasis is on community. It's a real departure from the us versus them mentality of a conventional prison environment.
And then this is where the magic happens, our kitchen. Hi, guys. Good morning, good morning. So, good morning. We just got all new cookware, which is exciting for them, especially because they know better than anything how a pot cooks and how, like, if it's a good pot or not. So they have the air fryers, we have the 4 ovens, the 3 standard size refrigerators, Instapot, we have rice cookers, all those other things.
This is legit. This is really well equipped,
Checks out, right? It checks out.
It looks like a professional, like, industrial kitchen.
Yeah, so seriously, the guys do a really great job, like, working together in here. We have a lot of men who meal prep and choose to go, like, in together on a meal. Yeah. Drew, what are you making?
Oh, grilled cheese and potato wedges.
Grilled cheese and potato wedges.
That sounds delicious.
Easy,
Yeah.
easy peasy.
Do people ever fight over leftovers?
Oh, it depends who cooked. So it's interesting. Well, yesterday I saw someone go around. They're like, hey, I've got extra white rice. Does anybody need white rice? So that's cool. Yeah. It was nice. We have a lot of communal meals, which is wonderful.
Do you cook with these guys?
Yeah. So I'm going to be honest with you. In the beginning, I cooked significantly more. And it was so much fun. I always do say, like, I feel like a sous chef right now because I was really blown away how much initiative they wanted to take and really get in there. But to this day, oftentimes guys will be like, hey, Miss D, can you tell me how to make this? Or can you help me with this? Or can you show me if this looks right? Or things like that.
In Norway, inmates can buy groceries from the prison's commissary, including fresh produce. That wasn't possible at SCI Chester, so they rejiggered the formula a bit and set up a prisoner shopping program with ShopRite supermarkets. They can take money they earn in the prison's work program and purchase groceries with it, like in real life. And for many of these men who came into prison as teenagers, learning how to budget and cook are not skills they had before starting their sentences. I'm noticing that guys are going in and out of their rooms freely.
Yes. Yeah. So again, with that normalcy principle, during the hours of, good morning, Mr. Williams, during the hours of 8 a.m. to 3 p.m., it's productivity time. Just because, again, when they go home, we want them to remember, you guys are going to be on a schedule at some point or another. We kind of have to adhere to that. So we want them doing something productive right now, which just means they're not going to see them playing pool. They're not going to be playing a video game. They're not going to be watching TV, right? They're going to be working on something constructive. But they can come in and out of their rooms as they please during this time.
There was one more place on my tour that Paige was excited to show me.
When we went to Norway and Sweden, I was taken aback by how much green space there was. Devane. So we have been afforded a space that we can come outside, weather and staffing permitting, but we can come out here and kind of find your center, relax, enjoy the fresh air, listen to the birds.
That's really lovely.
It is pretty nice.
Green space.
There's a lot of green space. This is all that this will grow back. I wish you could be here when it blooms because it looks, it's much nicer to look at.
But it's a garden.
It is. We have a garden out here. We did have quite a bit more seating previously. We're going to have to get that back. But it's a nice area. Even now with limited seating, the guys will come out, hang out at night and just flex.
It's nice.
Like last year we had an amazing event. First ever of its kind. And we allowed the residents to invite one family member from their visitor list, and we came in and we had a full-on barbecue. Their family members were here. It was such a beautiful, and again, this is completely unheard of, like fraternization, like you can't do this, and it went well.
I wanted to find out exactly how Little Scandinavia came about and what exactly the people behind it are hoping to achieve. The academics behind the Scandinavian Prison Project are Jordan Hyatt, a professor at Drexel University in Pennsylvania, and Synnøve Andersen, a professor at the University of Oslo. Jordan was at SCI Chester when I visited.
We've taken groups of officers to Scandinavia 3 times over the past few years. The first group was in 2019. It was every officer from the block. And then in 22 and 2024, because new staff joined the project and there was new leadership both in the department and in the facility.
The whole idea began in 2018 as a collaboration between the Drexel University and Oslo teams.
We were able to come together and conceptualize a program where frontline correctional officers were able to travel abroad to Scandinavia to see firsthand kind of how that system worked. Not as the way you would read it in a book or see it on TV, but really a very kind of firsthand, on the housing units kind of an experience. It's not just the classroom learning part. It's not just the site visits, but it's really getting the chance to work on the blocks and experience firsthand how their Scandinavian counterparts do their job. That is the conceptual heart of this entire project, because those are the staff who then come back and propose the kinds of changes. It would not be sufficient to just teach them about how things are done differently. They are the experts in corrections. They are the ones who do the job here.
And why Scandinavia?
For a couple of different reasons. So if you look at the kind of public discourse around humane prisons, you will almost always find Scandinavia featured. It is in many ways kind of the North Star for people doing this kind of work. And so it was a natural fit. Our project is also led by an American researcher and a Scandinavian researcher. And so we were able to kind of bridge that gap, both from a pedagogical standpoint, but also from a very practical standpoint.
People might say, well, Norway and Sweden are very different countries. They're so much smaller. They can do things that a country like the US can't. What do you say to that?
So the first part is true. They are very different countries. They are smaller. They are culturally very different in ways that matter. But prisons are prisons across the world, right? The kind of an entire model of incarceration was developed here in Philadelphia and exported across the country and the rest of the world. If you go and look at older prisons in Norway and in Sweden, they're built on the Philadelphia model. So there is something inherently transferable about incarceration.
He's right. In the 18th century, the Pennsylvania Prison Society was formed in response to the deplorable conditions of Philadelphia's penitentiaries. The society's actions led to sweeping reforms, chief among them solitary confinement. The Pennsylvania system was adopted in countries around the world. So, like Jordan said, it's a continuation of swapping ideas.
You can't move the entire thing here, but you can take pieces and see if they could work. If you look at what they've done here at Chester, it's changes that are big, it's changes that are small, but it's also changes that are sometimes a lot less visible, right? Thinking about the way that the staff are trained and they are given the autonomy to run a unit in a very different way.
People moved to Little Scandinavia using a lottery process, which means that everyone who is in the general population units has the chance to move into Little Scandinavia when a spot opens up. Jordan says this lottery process allows his team to conduct a randomized control trial on how moving into this kind of living environment can affect a person.
We really try and understand the kind of procedural justice aspect of living on this unit. The relationship between the staff and the incarcerated people should be different because of the way the unit was designed. And, we try and kind of measure that in various ways. We are very interested in seeing whether or not there was an increase in violence. It has been the case so far that incidents of violence on the unit are very, very rare, and much rarer than perhaps in the rest of the facility. And so we also look at levels of behavior and rule violations that don't rise to the level of violence. So misconducts, failure to follow the rules, contraband, drug use, things like that. And what we're seeing are lower rates as well on the unit, at least at this point in the pilot.
It's worth noting that Scandinavian prisons face the same problems we have here in the US, like drug addiction and mental health issues. So the population isn't unique. But what is unique is that in Norway, corrections officers go through 2 years of training, both practical and in the classroom. Of course, it helps that this education is paid for, like in many other European countries. And this level of education and support for COs is a critical piece of this project. If the people working at the prison are coming to an environment where they feel valued, this has a direct influence on their relationship with inmates.
The Little Scandinavia unit provides an opportunity to not only kind of rethink the way that a prison housing unit could be, but also a way to document that in ways that go beyond kind of the traditional metrics. So we want to understand what is the impact of sound. So how do people experience their time in that way? What is it like to have a single cell? How does that impact their sleep quality? And how do these kind of non-traditional measures of understanding prison climate possibly provide us a window into understanding the lived experience of incarceration? And also, how does that translate to staff well-being? And there's a growing body of research that suggests that these two groups are intrinsically linked, right? What happens to one happens to the other. From both an environmental quality standpoint, from a policy standpoint, the unit provides a way of looking at that in a framing that doesn't exist in many other places.
This all sounds great and pretty groovy. Some might even argue Little Scandinavia is a little too groovy.
I would say I had a little bit of an eye roll, like, oh yeah, here we go. I don't know if this is going to work or how this is going to go.
Bret Bucklen is the research director at Pennsylvania's Department of Corrections, and he's on the advisory board of the Scandinavian Prison Project.
I've been in the research department here for my whole career, so I'm a little bit probably skeptical just coming into anything because a lot of the things that we try end up not working. And so I think my prior was that we probably would have a null impact here, at least on recidivism, probably not have an impact one way or the other. It probably wouldn't reduce recidivism, but not make people worse either. Prison is an artificial environment. Even in a unit like Little Scandinavia, it's still in prison and it doesn't look like outside of prison. And so I think some of the behaviors that happen in prison, good or bad, don't necessarily translate outside of prison. You could have a person that's relatively well adjusted in prison and they get out and they do more bad things. But in general, I would think that's a leading indicator that a person's on the right track to personal growth. If we're seeing more positive behavior in prison and more growth, then that should translate to the outside. But I do want to hedge there because we don't have the recidivism results. And let's say even if we do find a reduction in recidivism, is it enough of a reduction to justify the cost? Because we might spend millions of dollars on this type of unit. And let's say that we only find like a 1 or 2% reduction in recidivism, which isn't nothing, but fairly small. And then we have to ask, is it worth all that money when there's a cost to that? Because every bit of money that we spend on that is a bit of money that we can't spend on something else somewhere else. And so the money might be better spent on another program that has a bigger return on investment. Maybe that program for the same amount of money or less reduces recidivism by 5% or 10%.
In 2013, Pennsylvania's Department of Corrections sent Bret to Europe before the project began. He admits he was struck by what he saw and thought there were things they could or should incorporate back in Pennsylvania.
One of the most impressive things to me was the staff training that they do over there in their prison system. They put their corrections officers through a 2-year training before they're on the job. And that's compared to, I think we're at like 5 weeks or something like that here in Pennsylvania. So a much more rigorous training, basically giving them an associate's degree before they're on the job. And so I think that professionalization of the position there probably brings a lot. And I'm not sure that we could ever get to 2 years, but something like that, I think we could probably, do more in terms of training our staff to get a little bit closer to what I saw over there.
But the corrections officers who work in Little Scandinavia volunteered and were chosen on merit, handpicked for the job. Given that and their motivation to want to work in the Little Scandinavia unit, they could be primed to appreciate the benefits.
It begs the question of whether we get a staff member that maybe is less motivated to work on a unit like this or more pessimistic than your average staff person about this, or just doesn't want to make it work. Could you put a staff person like this in that environment and make it work? And that's what I really want to learn going forward is scalability of this approach. It may work at SCI Chester or in a limited environment, but when we if we were trying to scale this more broadly, pick kind of the average staff person and put them in a position to work on a unit like this, could that be effective and could that have the same results?
As Bret said, Little Scandinavia is still prison. While some of the amenities may create an environment closer to the outside world, it is not the outside world. When I was there, I noticed how time seemed to pass so much slower. And I was busy, recording, talking with people, taking it all in. I thought maybe 3 or 4 hours had passed, only to learn that I had been there for just 2 hours. Now we're going to take a short break, but when we come back, we'll hear what the residents of Little Scandinavia make of their housing unit. So what do current residents of Little Scandinavia think of the experiment they've found themselves in? Does this environment motivate them to rehabilitate and make a successful return to society? A couple of them showed me their cells, which are different from those in the general population. First of all, each resident has his own cell. In Gen Pop, there are 2 inmates in every cell, and they have to share everything, including the toilet in the corner. In Little Scandinavia, they can decorate the space however they want, including a mini fridge, the most critical part according to one resident named Richie.
The big thing is the refrigerator. The fact that I got a refrigerator in my room is really a big deal. I get to store some of my frozen stuff. If I get up in the middle of the night and I want to get something to drink, something cold, so it's just right there. It's funny. One time, I opened up the freezer, and I had a steak in there. And she was like, "You got a steak in there?" I said, I don't even eat the steak. I probably had it there 6 months. Just knowing that I could have the steak when I want is a big thing for it. Access is a big thing. I think access is a big theme for the whole unit. We have so much access that we would have taken for granted. And maybe people on the streets take it for granted, that we have access. We get up in the morning, want to go do our laundry, want to bake something, or want to cook something. It's just normal things that we've been out of practice doing.
How long have you been here?
I've been here from the very beginning. I'm one of the 6 mentors, the original guys that came over in 2020 in March. And through the pandemic and everything, we officially started in May of 2022. So I've been here from the beginning, and we've had some input about, things that we wanted to do on the unit. But the cell, another big thing about the cell is the floor. We have a nice polished floor that I could walk around barefooted if I wanted. I've never done that in all our cells throughout the years. Concrete, you come off the bed, you go into your slippers, and, so that's a big deal.
Personal space is a privilege only afforded to Little Scandinavia, something this inmate doesn't take for granted.
My name is Lewis. Been here on the Scandinavia housing unit for approximately 3.5 years now.
Were you in Gen Pop before?
Yes. I actually was on Gen Pop here for a few years, and at the time I had been incarcerated for about 16, 17 years, and I've been incarcerated now for going on 20.
Could you describe what's on your wall?
Yes, so prior to coming to the Scandinavia housing unit, I was on the honor block, and I was a dog handler / trainer and groomer for about 4 years. So when I first came over here, there was no animals allowed on the housing unit. So I said, you know what? I can't bring the animals. Let me at least put one on the wall. So I have a mural of a big bully, as they call us, the breed, with the Philadelphia skyline. That's where I'm from. And yeah, and it matches my bed sheets, which is red and black and gray. So
is red your favorite color?
Actually, it's all the way from like burgundy down to pink. I love the whole entire spectrum. So yeah.
Because there's definitely a theme. It's very tidy. You clearly love dogs, and the color red, maroon, burgundy. You have a really nice place here.
Thank you.
So how much longer are you going to be here?
So I have approximately like 2 years and a few months. So not really long anymore.
Do you feel like this space allows you, or it will allow you to re-enter the real world, so to speak, with greater ease?
Yes, absolutely. So currently, I just signed up and put an application in for Eastern University to get my associate's degree in liberal arts. And just having this space here with no interruptions, it gives me time to reflect, focus into my assignments, and just overall just grow, right? And not have someone who's doing the opposite of what I'm doing disturb me in that way. So yeah, for sure. I'm able to utilize this space to grow into a better person. As humans, we adapt to our environments. In a regular prison setting where it's like harsh and it's like just gang affiliated, and it's just like all the nonsense is around. Unfortunately, sometimes you get tied into that and your mentality shifts. So sometimes you have to be on survival mode. But being on this housing unit, you don't have to worry about that. You can actually put your guard down. You don't have to be in that mind space. And just being here, like, you're able to really work on yourself. And that's what I've been doing since day one.
While it's still too early in the Little Scandinavia project to determine exactly how effective this initiative is on reducing recidivism, it's clear the residents appreciate the difference it is making on their lives inside prison.
I think the men feel safe in the housing unit. I think the staff feels safe in the housing unit. I've actually never felt safer working in corrections than I do over here, which is interesting because when we brought the kitchen over, there was so much pushback because they're like, they're gonna have pots and pans, someone can kill you, you have pool sticks and balls, this can be a weapon. But the reality is that anything can be a weapon, right? If someone wants to hurt you, they don't need a pool table or a fish tank or a frying pan. So we just kind of had to do things that were uncomfortable. And every single thing we do over here is counterintuitive to the way that I was trained. But again, I feel much safer. The population feels safer. And really, that was our goal when we created this housing unit, to create an environment where the men could elect to change, right? Having the opportunity to work on this housing unit has absolutely improved my quality of life. Learning to juggle that correction officer lifestyle is not easy. And I do say that. I think it's really important that people stress that, even in training, the life expectancy of a corrections officer is 58 and a half. They say you might get like 40 checks before you die after you retire.
And is the correlation there just the stress?
Stress, yeah, absolutely. And the statistics for mental health and just wellness in general it's horrifying if you look at the statistics for people who are in corrections, like corrections professionals. It's terrible. The data is really sad.
What's the difference between working an 8-hour shift here versus an 8-hour shift in Gen Pop?
Yeah, it's not as draining. You don't feel defeated. Some days you can walk into a general population housing unit and 5 minutes in feel like your day is shot. 5 minutes. You didn't even give the day a chance. And you're already like, I've had enough and I'm okay with leaving. But you can't. Yeah, so it doesn't feel that way over here. I feel oftentimes I come to work and I walk through my housing unit door and I feel excited to be here.
And what's it like coming home as compared to how it was when you were in Gen Pop?
Well, I cry a lot less. And that's the truth, honestly. You used to get mandated, it would like literally be so devastating. If you got mandated, like in your head, you were going home that night and they're like, hey, you're gonna work another 8 hours today. It would be like soul crushing for me. Like, I'm not even exaggerating when I say that some days when that happened, I would absolutely cry and like feel like it's like I can't do it.
You're overstimulated.
I'm overstimulated. I'm overwhelmed. I don't want to spend another 8 hours here. I'm not going to be the best version of myself for the population. It's too much. I'm not in a good place for that. Leaving here now, I don't cry. I've got teammates with me every single day. So there is always someone I can rely on, someone I can look to.
Honestly, that's sort of how a job should be. You shouldn't be bearing the load for everybody.
Not everyone, really, and anyone, even the best of our best. I think we can all use a hand. We are better together.
And in Little Scandinavia, it seems like this community of residents and correctional officers are better together, sharing this environment. The signs are so encouraging that the Pennsylvania Department of Corrections is expanding this model to 3 other state prisons. Here's Jordan Hyatt again.
One of them is a maximum security prison, one of them is a facility for women, and one of them is compositionally very much like Chester, but on the other side of the state, in the western side. So again, looking at how flexible this particular model is and how it could be adapted to these different kinds of populations. Because that's really important. This is not a prescriptive program where they have to do X, Y, or Z in order to be, Little Scandinavia certified. But rather, this is a way of rethinking the role of a correction officer, rethinking the way that housing units can be run or should be run, and using the Scandinavian model as an inspiration for those changes. But now, instead of having to look all the way to Stockholm or Oslo for a comparison, they can also come here to Chester. And so it's really exciting to be able to build a stronger coalition, a wider coalition focused on these kinds of changes.
If one thing was clear after visiting Little Scandinavia, aside from the potential impact on the lives of its residents and corrections officers. It was the importance, the need for people like Paige to be among the thousands of corrections officers in America.
I'm like one of the very few people who are like, oh no, I wanted to be a correction officer. I wanted to be a correction officer. I felt this was like an environment where we could use positive energy. And like, I said, where better could I bring this energy to? I think, we just need to drop seeds of positivity here. However, working on the general pop housing units, even now, I think about this often. Let's say the program, someone said to us tomorrow, hey, this is no more. I don't believe that I could confidently do corrections anymore just because it's very difficult for me to get on board. And with the idea that we're not doing anything positive, I'm not doing anything that is impactful, we're not doing anything to benefit the incarcerated population, the staff, or our communities, and feeling like we're just warehousing people and not doing anything for the betterment of themselves and our communities that we live in, for me, I just can't get down with. What environment is dimmer than this? But that doesn't mean that we can't plant that seed of positivity, plant that seed of hope, and maybe make a change.
A change that may or may not be embraced. Researchers in Oslo and Pennsylvania are still crunching the data to see what kind of impact Scandinavian-style prisons have on reducing recidivism and staff turnover. Even though the evidence is only anecdotal at this point, Little Scandinavia is much more peaceful than the rest of SCI Chester. Does that make it enough of a success? Skeptics like Bret Bucklen argue this kind of program only works if there is a significant return on investment, that taxpayer dollars are being spent effectively, and that there's a clear link between better prison conditions and lower recidivism rates and higher staff retention. In the meantime, Pennsylvania is willing to find out. From the evidence I saw there, it's no surprise the pilot is being expanded. Who knows? Maybe more housing units in correctional facilities across the country will begin to resemble IKEA showrooms. Okay, recap. Number 1, traditional US prison conditions can push both inmates and corrections officers into survival mode. But units like Little Scandinavia could reduce tension and improve the safety and health for everyone inside. Number 2, rehabilitation through normalcy and community just might make prisons safer for everyone. Private cells, shared kitchens, greenery, and officer-resident rapport aim to mirror real life, helping inmates build practical skills, personal responsibility, and a mindset better suited for re-entry. Number 3, though it's still too early to data crunch, the Little Scandinavia unit has fewer violent incidents, improved staff well-being, and strong buy-in from participants, prompting expansion and signaling potential for broader prison reform. I came away from Little Scandinavia feeling hopeful. It's these kinds of experiments that can lead to meaningful, positive change for everyone in a correctional facility. That's all this week. Let us know what you think about this podcast. Subscribe and leave us a review. I'm Christina Quinn, and together we are fighting crime. Thanks for listening to Fighting Crime. Please subscribe to us on your podcast player, and then you can easily keep up to date with all the new ideas we're covering. Our series producer is Nastaran Tavakoli Far. This episode was produced by Benji Guy. Additional production by me, Christina Quinn. Video production and editing by Mike Tamman and James Paige. Emily Owens is our resident expert. Our researcher is Ben Miley Smith. The theme music is by Armin Bazarian. Marketing by The Podglomerate. Our executive producers are Meredith Peebles and Jonathan Coates. This is an Indio Media production for Arnold Ventures.